I'm delighted to be joined by the amazing Ciara from Socially Ciara. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm really good. It feels like an age since we last spoke, Ciara.
It does, I know. But yeah, I don't know where the time is going. It's so quickly,
I know.
like a Thursday again in the week. But yes, we've been chatting loads recently. It's been
I
great.
know. It's great. And I've enjoyed every conversation. So I'm really looking forward to today. And I just want to start really at the beginning for those that haven't met you, an introduction. And let's delve in a little bit about how your business started and where you are today.
For sure. So my name is Ciara. I am the founder and managing director of a social media agency called Socially Ciara. I'm originally from Limerick and moved over to London about 7 years ago. And I suppose like starting off with my background, my degree was even in like business with event management. So I kind of started off looking at the business side. I really honestly thought I was going to be organizing festivals that like really appealed to me. Then I went and studied it and I realized that if you do that, you basically have no social life or any like downtime. So I kind of quickly moved away from the event side. I knew it wasn't for me, but I actually did end up finishing out that degree and knew that I wanted to focus more on the business side. And went into a public relations company in Dublin and actually interned with them. So it's Presence PR for anybody who might know them.
Yeah.
So I worked with the lovely Joanne at Presence PR and did my internship there and like fell into the world of communication and absolutely loved it. I always say Joanne was probably my toughest boss that I ever had, but also the one I learned the most from. I mean, she was an absolute like powerhouse, and that's why that agency does so well. And yeah, loved that whole world, but I knew that I was going to move away from Dublin. I kind of had done my stint there, went back to Limerick, finished college, and then I was like, you know what, I think it's time I moved over to London. So yeah, about 7 years ago I moved to London. Knew I wanted to work in communication and knew that I wanted to get into either fashion or beauty, so I went in-house with a professional hair care company called Goldwell. So I worked with the Cow salon division, and Cow, for anybody who doesn't know them, I do always find they're like a hidden secret because you know them, but you don't think you know them. So they also own Molton Brown and John Frieda and, a couple of other different brands. But yeah, amazing Japanese company, and went in with them, started off in communications as an executive. And then after about 18 months, moved into a more social media, digital focused role. And yeah, kind of worked within that role for a few years. And then I think, as anybody in their mid-20s, you get to a point of frustration or almost like, I want a little bit more. And the company were in a position where they were like, well, you know what, we don't really have an opening right now. And I was like, okay, I do what everybody does when they look for a job and they jump on LinkedIn and they're like, okay, start to reply to all these recruiters who've been messaging me. So yeah, had a few meetings with a couple of different recruiters. And actually, what ended up happening was I met this lady and she was like, I love your CV. You've got all this experience, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I didn't have that much experience, to be honest with you, but she put me forward for this role. I went for it, and what ended up happening was, in the feedback, I didn't get the role, and she was like, you know what, the feedback was that you had just pigeonholed yourself a little bit too much because the company I was working with was B2B. It was too limited. I didn't have that consumer experience. And I was like, all right, okay, well, that's always going to be an issue for me now. If I stay with this company and I don't do this, and I was kind of like stuck with that mentality. And then I was kind of thinking about that, and I was like, okay, well, how do you get out of that? And I had previously set up a blog, like many people, when I was in college. I was like, oh, do you know what, this blogging thing is easy. It was like the start of it, and that's actually what got my foot in the door of the bigger company when I went to London, because they saw that I knew how to use social, that I knew how to set up a website, all of these things that honestly I had taught myself like the summer before. I wasn't in any way advanced, but I think it was the initiative of doing something in your spare time. So I kind of went back to that mentality when I found myself at that roadblock, and I was like, okay, well, what did I do the first time I had a problem? I'd like, okay, I'm all into like upskilling and, you know, further development. So I was like, okay, well, what would it look like if I went back to something like that? But I knew I didn't want to be doing outfits of the day. I didn't want to be doing like, you know,
Yeah.
this is the latest jewelry and things like that. So I actually just kind of changed it to be more of a portfolio. And I didn't know what I was going to call it. I just knew that I wanted to build my own online presence and do a blog to show that even though I might work in a B2B sector, I knew about consumers. I am a consumer. I know and I think like that. So that was kind of where I started with it. And the name didn't come to me for a really long time. I think that took me a few months, but I was like, okay, let's redesign the website. Let's like build this up, make it look professional. I spent about 4 or 5 months writing blogs in the back, like, you know, just building up case studies of things I knew, so that I had a site with a lot of content on it when it went live. The name kind of came about, you know, like everything else, after a couple of glasses of wine with a friend, and he was like, yeah, but you want your name to be in it. And I was like, oh yeah. And I was really into a blogger at the time called Sincerely Jules. And I just loved her name and I thought it was really cool. And I was like, you know, I wonder if you could do something like that. And then just out of nowhere, like Socially Ciara kind of came to me, and I was like, oh, well, that could be kind of cool. And then I was like, I'll go with it and see. And like, it's 4 years later and I'm still using it, but that's kind of where that came from. So yeah, it started off as a blog. Never had the intention of even doing any freelance work with it. But on the day the site went live, I got my first client, and that was kind of unexpected. But then when I actually kind of looked at it, I was like, yeah, it does kind of lead itself to that. So yeah, I started doing freelance work, and then it grew. And I then kind of made it my full-time gig then, only in 2020. So it was like, yeah, I grew the team, and it's been a very gradual and slow process. I think for some people who might think it kind of came out of nowhere, I've been working on this for 4 years, and that's late nights and weekend. I've lost a lot of weekends to this. You know, just investing my time. For me, it never felt like work. So
I think people forget the work that happens before things happen.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and I know this happens with me and clients often. You know, people will say, oh, you know, I love the way that you've done that. I'd like to do something similar. Can you talk me through? And I'm like, well, I was working on that for the last 3.5 years. So I was building. And one thing, you know, you said there, you know, you built your audience before you needed your audience to a certain respect. Do you know what I mean? You had everything prepped and ready to go. And I love the fact that you'd prepared your website and the content was already there, because so many people launch and then you go and you're like, oh, don't launch quite yet. I think you're missing 6 of this, 10 of this, you know, get the information out there. I suppose what I'm really interested in, because I you know, work with a lot of people that have side hustles, and that one of the questions always is, when is the right time, Sian, to move from the side hustle into doing this full time? So for me, I always say I kind of always tripped over my businesses. I just knew in my gut it was the right time to step into them. And for other people, they saved a certain amount of money and then they moved. So how did it work for you?
But you know what? Like, I'm still lucky that I still have the opportunity to work on the brands that I was working with anyway. So I'm very lucky in that sense. But you know what? It kind of came at just the right time. Because, you know, the company I was working with were kind of going through a restructure anyway, and it was kind of that worked itself out a little bit. But I think there will always be an excuse. You know, you'll always find something. Even for me, like, COVID happened, and then and you know, and then I was buying a house, and you know, then I needed like full-time things for a mortgage. There's always going to be something, there really will be. And And I think the biggest thing that I would say is like, yeah, just having that foundation sorted, because I knew that even when I was going to go full time, I was never going to be able to do everything myself. So could I get the business to a level where it was like, it was funding itself, having a little bit of profit. And then I was like, okay, the next financial step is, okay, then I pay me, which, look, a lot of people do things the other way. But I was like, I need this business to be, kind of self-funded in a way,
Yeah.
that I could take a step out, because I'm quite an ambitious person as well, and it's like, okay, well, I don't want to be the sole provider of this agency. If I take myself out of it, could it fund itself? That was a financial goal for me. I know a lot of people kind of do it a different way, but for me that was kind of the biggest starting point.
And you're right, they do. So there's always two ways to do it. The way that you have done, I find a lot of people that I work with are trying to be everything to the business. Then they get overwhelmed, then they question if the business can survive, but actually they don't know if it can or not, because they're working so hard. They haven't even worked out the financials to see if the business is viable.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I'm a great believer in that, is sitting down and actually working out the mechanics of the business before you step into it. And a lot of the time people don't do that. And actually that's where I normally come in. And funny enough, I've had 2 calls this week of people going, I'm completely overwhelmed. What should I do? And I'm like, let a bit of it, let some go, let it go.
Yeah.
People are
Yeah.
scared to let parts of their business go, but it makes complete sense to do
It
that.
does. It's really scary. One of the things I felt really intensely overwhelmed last year, especially towards the second half of the year. And part and parcel of some clients wanting to, pause services because of COVID, that financially gives you some pressure. And then just like I felt I was swimming in admin. I had this, and then I took on the crazy task of doing Podmas, which was like, let's in December put out a podcast episode every day. Like, if I suggest in 2021 doing that again, someone just tell me to stop, because it was a lot. And then I put like pressure on the team to kind of help build content around that. And it just got to a point where I was like, I don't want this to be my life. I don't want to be overworked and then not feeling creative. So I made a financial decision to invest in an assistant. I was like, she can be a support for everybody, and just help me sort my life out a little bit. And honestly, since she's come in, I've already been able to free up my time to pitch to new business and actually grow and dedicate my time and energy into the things that are going to push the business forward, rather than me being drained by admin. That's not going to help anybody in the long run. But yeah, feeling overwhelmed is definitely, I think, every business owner faces.
And admin's not an income line. I recently took on an assistant the beginning of last month, and it's changed my world.
She's the best thing ever. I praise her all the time. Like, she's now my best friend.
I know. Well, I'm like that as well. Apart from my Lee, my virtual assistant, bless her, she's a shopaholic, and that's not a good friend to have. I'm always like, stop telling me to buy this thing online. But yeah, it's hilarious. No, and that's really important. If you're taking on someone to help you and assist, especially when it's in a virtual perspective, it's all about fit, isn't it? It's all about finding that right person that really understands you and understands your business and has the same love for it that you do.
Yeah.
And for yourself. And yeah, my driver is time for me.
Yeah.
So, but by having that, it's freed me up to actually take in more income.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what's going to grow the business. And I said to her, like, because when I hired her, I was like, look, I have to trust you completely, because I'm giving you access to my whole life in a lot of ways, because you have my emails. And although they're working emails, personal ones slip in there. So, she knows more information about me than some of my best friends at the moment. And that's a level of trust. But you know, we spoke about kind of that fear of handing things over. That was absolutely terrifying to me because I knew my business inside out. I knew everything about it. And you are kind of handing that over to somebody else to look after. That's a really scary thing.
It is, and one thing I think is scary as well. And you know, I've had many businesses, and this year is the first time I've put my name to a business, and your name is your business.
Yeah.
So it's really very different if your name leads the business as well, to give parts of that away. So
Yeah.
so who you employ, like, have you got a strategy? You know, do you go with your guts? How does it work for you?
Yeah, so I've been in all the companies that I've worked for, in all the kind of teams I've worked with, like, you know, be it the agencies or even beforehand. I worked in River Island for 6 years before I ever kind of did I suppose, a job related to my kind of profession. Every team I've been a part of, culture has been a really important factor, and it's the reason why I've stayed at certain companies for so long. And each team motivates each other. For me, I'd always wanted to instill that in any team I'd have or like would go on for Socially Ciara. So that was definitely going to be a big element for me. My dad's always kind of been a real inspiration in the sense of he works for a large company and he's in a very high management position. And he'd always told me, you know, you can, if you hire the attitude, you can teach the rest. And I suppose that always stuck with me. So yeah, I hire the attitude. If you've got the attitude, if you're motivated, if you've kind of got all of that stuff, and you look, I'm not saying that you don't know how to do social or any of that good stuff, but upskilling I'm a big fan of, and you can learn on the job. You learn a lot on the job. So that's kind of always been my approach. And if I feel the team click, that's always going to be really important for me, particularly because I've hired all women. And as a team of all women, we somehow get along really, really well. And that for me is like just a testament to hiring really well. And you know what? They are just amazing. They're an amazing team. And it's because of them we've been able to grow the way that we have as well.
Yeah, women that recognize the power of women together
Yeah.
are like, I just believe that's when the magic happens, because and actually I always worked, I was always like, when I was in corporate and top management, I was always with men, and it would always be like, oh, here she goes again. Do you know what I mean? It was just all those comments and everything. And I just knew when I left the corporate world and started working for myself that I would create something different. And I've always worked with women since.
Do you know what? Even all of my clients, I think because we're mostly like fashion and beauty, and you know, not stereotyping, but it is mostly women who set up those types of companies. Even all of our clients are women. And like, I was pitching to a man one day and I was like, I kind of almost forgot about how different they are, like even just the questions and things like that. And I'm like, oh, this is a bit of a challenge.
Do you know what? I did a networking thing the other day, and we got thrown into breakout rooms, and I was put in this breakout room with 3 men, and I was like, oh God, I haven't been in a room with 3 men, which my husband's very happy about. But but like, I was like, oh, how do I deal with this? And I found myself becoming mum. And actually organising them, because they were all fighting to talk. And I was like, you know, whereas we kind of give each other time a little bit more. I don't know, but no, and actually that leads me really well on to something that I really would love to talk to you about, which is that world of women and hairdressing and beauty, that we both spent quite a bit of time in. With that in mind, we were talking about the world of women, the fact that you kind of started in that industry of beauty and hair, and you've kind of stayed there, haven't you, to a certain extent?
Yeah, for sure. So like I said, in the last section, I worked B2B for a really long time, and I still do, because as I said, I still work on those brands, which is great, and I'm so thankful to still be able to do that. And because of that, yeah, I very much stayed within the beauty space. And a lot of the time you're speaking to business owners, and look, it's kind of part of the reason why Socially Ciara was such a passion project to begin with for me, because I love helping people. I love giving advice. And when I speak with business owners, the one thing I always find is they're just so busy. And it's kind of like what we were saying, there's a million things to do. There's only a certain number of hours in the day. And like we were saying, if something isn't giving you like a profit to your business, well, why am I doing this? And I think within the beauty industry, that's something that I find a lot of business owners, that's the discussion I end up having with them. It's like, you can get to a very profitable place on social, but it's kind of like we need to work up to it. It's like, think about how you approach social, and let's kind of make sure that we're putting out that right content that does kind of get you to that profitable place. So yeah, I love the beauty industry as well, because it's just so creative, it's so fun. And I think as well, the people that work within it tend to be open to like really new ideas, and I find the industry to be really open. And I even would say that it's a little bit different in fashion than it is in beauty, and that's why I think I stay in this space way more. Yeah, I love it.
I do find it very creative.
Mm.
And I had a beauticians for, well, I ran a beauticians for 12 years. It was mine for 4. And yeah, I think it was, you could be really creative with your marketing. And like I think we spoke about this before. I believe in power in numbers. So like years ago, I'd be ringing people saying, look, I think I can get this ad. We've both got the same machine. Do you want to go in together? I could get the ad and we can split the money. And I have to say, like, 15 years ago, people were really not up for that. They couldn't sort of get their head around why I would do all the work. And I'd be like, well, because I'm going to get something at a quarter of the price. I don't mind doing the work.
Yeah.
But I find that it's really opened up over the last sort of 10 years, especially. I think that in 2008, 2009, that recession really humbled a lot of people and made them really start thinking about how they can work better and collaborate better. And I think that's sort of stayed with the industry over the years. Do you find that like a lot of the marketing that you're doing for bigger companies is this, can you mirror that for the smaller companies? Did you find it very different?
No, I think, to be honest with you, what I do is I kind of work off the same formula, no matter what the size of the business is, because the objectives are going to be the same. It's going to be, you want to grow your social media account, so you're getting that awareness. You want to be using it to platform your services or your products, and you want to be building up your brand. So there's going to be those 3 objectives. And that conversation is the same, no matter whether it's a small boutique on my high street or it's somebody who is the CEO of a major company. Like, those objectives are always the same. The figures are probably just where it's different. Like, somebody growing might be 100 to 1,000 followers, or but the framework and the objectives are still the same. So what I kind of tend to do is just kind of work on it on a more personalized level. So we've got that framework, but then I will break it down for you and be like, okay, what does personalization mean to you? And how does viral content help you? Because my community, even on another social media manager, although we're talking about the same things, there's going to be a lot about us that are very different. So what will go viral within my community could be very different to somebody else, and everything can be personalized. So I would say that it's the same approach. It's just some of the variants are a bit different.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you say, like, because I always say to I coach a lot of social media marketers that are starting out in business, and I always say, the first thing people are going to say to you is, I want to grow. And I find at the moment a lot of people sort of starting out or coming out of college are like, well, I can't guarantee growth. But I'm like, well, surely if you put the right elements in place, that helps people grow. It's not a guarantee, but so things like people showing up on camera for their business. I know, 50% of people find really hard. So how do you help people get over all those kind of elements?
Yeah. So to kind of touch on the grow part first, I think the first thing when I'm speaking with somebody and I ask them the objective and they say they want to grow, and I'm like, grow in what way? And then they're like, oh, the numbers. And then I quickly realized I have to do an education piece here on why followers are not everything. And one of the posts that I actually had up maybe about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, was this post about like 10,000 followers doesn't mean £10,000. Like, no matter what your numbers is, it doesn't mean that that's going to be financially better for you. I can guarantee you that like some businesses with a smaller amount of numbers can be more profitable than those with like 20, 30,000. And that's okay. So I definitely realized then, I'm like, okay, I need to educate this person a little bit on why numbers isn't everything. I would focus on engagement and making sure that the content is right, because if you're attracting the right types of followers, they're going to be buying into your content, what you're talking about, and all of that, and you're building up that real community. So we've got that side of it, which is the grow piece. And I can't remember what the second question was. Showing up. Yes. Yeah. So I did really struggle with the showing up, and stories came out and I was like, that's great for everybody else. I'm not doing that. So I'm like, no, that's really embarrassing for me. I'm not doing it. You know what really helped me? And when I was doing a few consultations for businesses, and they asked me the same thing, and they were like, well, how did you kind of get over that? And I was like, you really want to know how I got over that? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, I blocked my family and friends. And I was like, I just blocked them from Socially Ciara, because I have a personal account anyway. So if they want to follow me, want to see what I'm up to, they can follow me there. But Socially Ciara was for my business. It was about like a professional side of me, my profession essentially. So I just blocked them, but just from my stories, like they could see the feed post. And my boyfriend, he's the greatest person in the world, but like always was like, because he's Irish as well. So, you know, you have that slagging or that messer mentality, and he'd be like, who do you think you are with the stories? And I'm like, okay, blocked. You're just fully blocked. Like, you know, and it's just a joke. But honestly, I was like, I just need to do this until I get over this and until I'm comfortable. And I told everybody, you know, if they were blocked, I tell them, I'm like, look, just so you know, it's nothing personal, but you are too close to me for me to do this around you. And they were like, all right, okay, it's a bit weird. They were like, every single one of them were like, you know, I don't care. And I was like, but I care. Yeah. I care.
It's in their
like, it's in their head. So like I did that, I'd say, for about 6 or 7 months, and then I slowly just started to like let people back in. And you know what? It was always me overthinking it, for sure. Because I'd see other people do it, and do I like laugh at them? Absolutely not. And I think putting barriers in place until you get your confidence up is something I would always recommend. Once you do it once, you're kind of over it then.
I do find as well, you know, often business owners will say to me, oh, but, you know, I'm frightened. What if I get what I'm saying wrong? And I'm like, but you will be the only one that knows it's wrong, number one. And you're not bullshitting here. You know everything about your business. So you know, this is something that's easy to talk about. So, you know, we're not doing mastermind here. It's like literally just speak about something that you love. I remember the first time I went into sales many moons ago, I said to someone, oh, I don't think I could do sales. I can't sell anything. And they just all started laughing. And they were like, we never leave your beauticians without product. And I was like, oh, is that sales? I thought I was just telling you about stuff that I love.
Yeah.
That is sales. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, light bulb moment. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like it's all linked.
Yeah, because if you think of it like as sales, it feels like pressure. But actually, you know, I would never sell something that I didn't love or wasn't passionate about. So that's when sales works perfectly.
Exactly. Yeah.
So when you're talking about your passion and your business, I think that really comes across on the camera. And I love watching business on platforms, because I can really understand where it comes from. And this, you know, it's back to, isn't it, the story, the why of why they started.
And it's the personal side of a business as well, because, and I think especially with anybody, like we were saying, who has their name in the business, I was like, I just don't think it's okay for me not to show up, because my name is a part of the business, and people want to know who's Ciara, like why should I care or follow Socially Ciara? And look, I don't show up every day, but I do always kind of feel like just showing up every now and then also just gives a face behind that brand. And I think especially if your name is part of it, it's so important.
Yeah, and people really have to understand that. When I work with startups and we're doing names, I'll always say, if they go straight in with their own, I'll always say, okay, are you present? Do you want this business to be about you? And they're like, oh, hang on a minute. And when we go through, it's quite often, 50% of the time we change it. And I've been on both sides of the fence. When I opened my chain of Pilates studios, I was never in a picture for marketing. I didn't want to be the face of the business, because I wanted to be able to not, I wanted to be able to take time off.
Yeah.
So I strategically didn't. Now, everybody knew I owned it and I taught there and everything else, but I strategically, so obviously this business now, SeanHorn.com, I've no choice. I have to be present. But that's fine, because actually I was doing this every day anyway. So it's grand. So it is like finding that comfort zone, isn't it? And like, I love that world of beauty and hair, and they've had a tough year. So from a social perspective, like, is it coming back for them?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely can see it now, because we're in the UK, it's since the end, the lockdown kind of roadmap for the next 6 weeks has been outlined. So I can definitely sense in the last few days that community feel has come back, and everyone's just really excited. And the biggest thing that people are concerned about, that I could see over the past 6 months, is just like, actually, can I open my doors again? Yeah. Because salons have been closed for a really long time. They had a burst of, back in July when they were able to open again. But for the biggest thing is actually the business side of support. And that's been something that I can just see really resonating on social media. So it's actually created a really nice community of like, and I think you mentioned that a while ago, there is that community feel. It's like, yes, look, in a lot of instances, they are competitors, but at the same time, they don't really approach it like that in a lot of cases, because it's like, okay, let's learn from each other, and I've sat in, I can't tell you the amount of like virtual lunch sessions, coffee sessions with some of the salons, and just like listening to what they're talking about. And it's always just like, how do we prepare for when we open? Because when they open, they will be nonstop and it will be so busy for them, and that would be amazing. But it's like, how do they use their time more effectively through lockdown? So it's been a lot of like online education, be it through from a hair perspective. A lot of them actually have used this time to learn social media.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, how do we get ourselves set up so when we go back to the salon and we don't have any time and our days are really busy, how do we kind of set ourselves up for success in that sense? But I think the support of each other's businesses is something that's really lovely about that industry.
I think having had the time to reflect and actually look at your business and see where you can improve, people have also come to the realization that competition isn't competition, because especially in that industry, it's very personal. I go to the girl that waxes my legs for years. We have the chats. I'm not going. It's a real loyal arena to be in, and you and your team that you surround yourself have a lot to do with your success. It isn't about how quick you can wax my legs. It's about, because that might be my only 10 minutes off that week. Well, I think 3 hours off when they come back. I'll be in there all day, I swear to God.
Yeah, and that's it. And I think a lot of them, they're like, okay, well, how do I promote the services and all of this? And I was like, no, just, and I was like, well, get to that, but you're running before you can walk here. And I was like, let's take a step back and kind of think about your salon and think about where your brand is. Like, let's start there. Let's clean up your visual strategy. Let's kind of look at all of those things, because you should be treating your Instagram feed like your shop window.
Yeah.
And, positioning your team. I think a lot of the time people are afraid to push the team forward in case people leave.
Yes.
Is what I find. And, it's like, yeah, but what if they leave the business? And I'm like, well, that's just a part of life. Do I expect people to stay at Socially Ciara for the rest of their life? I mean, I'd love it, but I'm also a realist that might not happen. And I find that conversation happens quite a lot. And I'm like, but these are the faces of the business. And I'm like, these are the faces people know. And that's a big part of your story, and, a big factor for why people engage with you.
It's huge. And actually your customers will see you pushing and promoting and educating your team, and they will be, they'll really understand the story then of the business. My job is to promote other people's businesses.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that gives you more joy.
Yeah.
If you can do it for your team. And, I always used to say when I was in beauty, and I'm still in touch, I haven't been in beauty for God, 10 years, 12 years. And I still keep in touch with all the girls that work for me. No one left me to go somewhere on the same pay doing the same thing. Everybody left to improve themselves, to start their own business, to become a manager of somewhere else. You've got to be happy with that. You've got them ready for that.
This is it. Yeah, for sure. And like, even one of the things with Socially Ciara, when I started to grow the team, one big thing I considered was, do I change the name? It's not all about me. And I don't want it to be all about me. I want the team to be very much a part of the journey, because, since some of them have come on board, I've been able to offer up the service menu and offer other things, because their skill set's different to mine. And that's what makes a great team. So yeah, I thought about changing the name, but, I kind of asked the people who'd followed me since the beginning. I went onto Instagram stories, did polls. Everybody said no. And look, I get it. I had built my brand around Socially Ciara, and it makes sense to stick with it. But I changed the language around how we talk about ourselves. So it was all about, like, instead of my name is Ciara and this is all, it's like, we are Socially Ciara, we are a 360 social media agency. And even our socials was like, we do this. It's all just about changing the language, which is really important to me now. I have to love, we're a we.
I love that though. I love to go from an I to a we. There's much more fun in a we. Oh,
there is.
That sounds right. Oh, bless. Okay, let's talk about Socially Ciara, and let's talk about social. So, like, where next for you? I suppose, firstly.
Great question. So I definitely think that what I've always kind of looked at is, and I kind of recommend this for clients as well, is, kind of when you get your strategy, getting it right on one platform. So for us, for a really long time, that was Instagram. And look, that's not saying that we don't have a long way to go.
Yeah.
Once you hit one goal, you set another one. That's always going to be something. But I feel we've got a good strategy with Instagram. We get, like, I would say 90% of our clients and new business requests come through Instagram. So it's a platform that really works, but I want to expand that digital footprint. So, like, similar to you, we also started a podcast, and I definitely am focusing a lot of time and attention into that now. And that's a really big goal for me. And I honestly, it's been one of the most amazing networking opportunities. I know we've spoken about the word network before, and there is something a little bit cringe about it, but I've met so many people and had amazing conversations through it, and I'm not even into it a year. And for me, that's just a different platform that I'm loving. I'm an avid podcast listener. And actually, I downloaded a new app this morning. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's called Cappuccino.
What's it called?
Cappuccino. So what it is, it's like a mini, if you're into voice notes, which I definitely am, you can set up like WhatsApp. They're kind of like groups with some of your friends, and you all kind of add in like they're called coffee beans. So they can be up to like 2 minutes long, like a voice note into it. And what the app does is it kind of puts together like a mini podcast for your group that they send you like every day, or like depending on how active you are, but it's like a little podcast that you can do with your friends. And yeah, and I think that's just on the back of the fact that like audio is so big right now. It's so big, and that's not going to go anywhere. And I think, you know, with Clubhouse coming and the podcasts aren't going. Like, if you don't have a podcast, you need to start one now. I'm so thankful I did a year ago. And look, one of the biggest fears about podcasting is like, well, what if no one listens? Do you think anybody really listened to our first episode? Like, no, but actually, as people discover us, I can see that first podcast episode goes up in numbers and listenership each week. So that's why the content's kind of designed to be evergreen.
I think what I love about podcasting as well is that when someone starts listening this week, then they go back and they tend to listen from the beginning. That's what I find anyway. So so I sponsor a couple of podcasts as well as do my podcast, because I just think from a marketing perspective, it's genius platform to be on, because the marketing is there forever.
Yeah, for sure. And like, the thing is, people are either into podcasts or they're not. But I think where it really drove is like when we're all working from home, and podcasts kind of make you feel that you're still working with somebody, or, you know, somebody's there. So I really love them. So that's kind of something that we're really focusing on at the moment. And yeah, I suppose kind of other areas is like, you know, we're redoing our website, which is something that I redid our website last year, but it was actually just before I hired the team. So it was like, by the time they came on board, I was like, it feels a little bit redundant. Now, we update it every week with blog content and email marketing and all of that good stuff. But I was like, you know what? I want to do the whole site again. And I'd say my team hate me half the time, but I'm like, let's do it all again. And they're like, here, we just did that. And I'm like, yeah, but we can always be improving.
Yeah.
And that's why I always say to our clients as well, you know, just because you've done something doesn't mean you then don't look at it for 6 months. There's constant maintenance with these things to really work. That's why we do blogs every week.
I have to say your outreach is spectacular. I think it's a really good model for anybody that was thinking about, you know, going into business. But what I love about it, Ciara, is when I get my email or I get, you know, notification about something, it's not heavy. I don't feel like you're ever pitching to me.
Oh, good.
It really is so well done. Like, honestly, I get so many emails on a daily basis. I like clicking on yours.
Oh, good. That's so good to hear. Thank you.
But it's really good. It's not overpowering. You've just got the tone perfectly. Like your branding is really great, and the way you touch people is really, really clever. So I really, really would like to congratulate you on that, because I think it's a great model. People should take heed, because I don't like to get those, you need to open this now.
I know. And do you know what? I think sometimes they do work, but that can't be your full strategy. It absolutely can't. And I don't know if you follow Gary V. I mean, he's amazing. For me, he's a little bit like small doses, because a lot of what he says actually is repetitive, and I get that he gets the message across, but he does this thing, is it jab hook or something? Yes. But it's like, you know, making sure, and it's, look, everybody says the same kind of thing, but they say it in their own way, and his is jab hook. But essentially what the message is like, you can't expect people to, you know, from a business perspective, buy into you unless you've kind of given them a little bit of value before that. First of all, showing that you know what you talk about, and secondly, that you offer that value for their business, that it is actually for them. And I suppose we kind of, in a roundabout way, do that, because I give a lot of information for free. And a lot of the time it's a little bit like, okay, why do we give so much information? But it's like, because everything we say is like, it's generic enough that it's like, it's valuable. But like, I have this mentality, I'm like, okay, if I give you this for free, imagine what I could do when we work together. And that will always be the case, because every client is so different anyway, because their story will always be so personal. And I always think that you have to show your value with content.
I think so. And I'm a great believer that you give before you receive. So that works in all strains of life. So for me in business as well. And also you're creating this amazing community. And, in the last year, even, with your Zooms, are you going back to those?
Yeah, I think I'm going to do them. But what I think I will do is maybe do one a month. Yes. Rather than one a week, because they were, you know what, they didn't actually take a lot of energy, because the format of it was we would just show up and nothing was prepared. It was all off the cuff. And I liked that, but also kind of gave me like low-key anxiety. Sometimes I was like, what if I get a question and I don't know the answer? So yeah, like I loved them, but at the same time I was like, I think it's a lot to do it once a week. So yeah, I'll probably do them once a month.
And I think people forget, it's not all about the prep. Like the energy that takes to entertain a group of people on Zoom, that takes a lot from a person. Actually, I remember when you were saying about doing Podmas, like if I do something like that and I realize it's too much, then I will write down in my diary for next year what I did and don't do it. Because what happens as humans is we forget how it made us feel. And then we go, oh, do you know what, though? It was great crack. We'll do it again. Because we just forget. We only remember the good stuff. That's how our brain works.
Yeah.
And so actually in the first lockdown, I went live every day, 7 days a week for a month at 11 o'clock. And then a lot of my friends are going, oh, I'm going to go live. I'm going to go. And they did like 2 and they were like, Jesus, how are you doing that every day? And I was like, I actually don't know. I'm absolutely exhausted.
Shattered. Yeah. Do you know what? I think where Podmas was quite stressful was I only decided in November to do it. And I put an extreme amount of pressure on me and my team. But I do blame Elle, who works for me, because I was having a catch up with her and I was like, I've had this like outrageous idea. And she's like, well, what is it? And I was like, well, what about like, and my initial plan was, I was like, what about if we did this next year? It's probably a bit soon for this year. And she's like such a motivator. And she's like, we can do this. Like, let's do it. So I like halfway through the month, I blamed her and I was like, I'm exhausted and I blame you for every minute of it. But we've committed and I will see it through and we'll get it done. But if we're going to do it this year, we're starting it in like August.
Okay. I was going to say, did they go out live? But yeah, pre-record, definitely 100%. Don't put yourself under that much pressure. I completely agree. And when you're thinking about people that you want on to the podcast, do you have like, is it just business or you prefer social marketeers? Who do you look for?
I think I like a mix, to be honest with you. At the minute, I'm kind of looking for business owners because we've had a few experts on and they've been great. But I just to kind of switch it up a little bit as well, I think business owners is really great. And I'm actually recording with somebody in the next couple of weeks, and she's just got such an interesting story. So she's a fashion brand, really successful on Instagram, got up to 80,000 followers, and then got hacked and had to start again. And when I heard that story, because Fern, who helps me out with the organizing everything with the podcast, we were looking at guests and she's like, so I know this girl Mel and this is her story. And I was like, yes, this is exactly the person we need on the podcast, because that, to me, I was like, I instantly wanted to know more. I was like, I can't wait to speak to her, because that's everyone's fear. It's like, what if we lose all these followers? And that's why social footprint is so important across digital. Like, I'm the biggest lover of social media, but you need to have your website, you need to have your email, because like that, what if it all went tomorrow? How do you talk to people?
No, it's so scary. And like, I don't have big numbers. And last October I was hacked. But I was actually hacked into my Facebook, into my marketing. So they went into my ads manager. They removed me, and I'm the person that set it up. They removed me. They spent £1,500 in 4 hours putting out awful adverts. The only reason we found out that we'd been hacked so quickly was I was getting emails saying you're disgusting.
Oh my gosh.
Because the ads they were putting out was spam, saying that people were dead and stuff. It was awful. But we couldn't go in because they'd removed me as the owner of my page and the owner of my ads manager. And on the day, I know, you know, a lot of people in the industry, no one to this day can work out how they did it. It still has never really been fixed by Facebook. I got my money back from my bank. We only got ads manager back. It delayed the launch of my business by 2.5 months, and we only got ads manager back about 4 weeks ago, but we actually ended up just starting all over again through a different Facebook page, which still isn't connected to my Instagram. So I still can't promote my Instagram.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's really, do you know what? It's really scary that someone could do that. And unfortunately, the wills that be at Facebook aren't very proactive in helping the business.
Because you can't speak to anybody. It's all like automated, and that really irritates me.
The funny thing that happened to me as well, you know, when you go in to add a business, the business account, and then you can go in and speak to them at least, so you can send them an email or chat. Well, that button, it disappeared off for me. I didn't have access, so I had to go through a friend's account to speak to them. And funnily enough, since I started spending money again with them, tomorrow they want to have a meeting with me. So I can't wait.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Yeah, give them a piece of your mind.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to be, look, you know, we need to sort this out. But hacking, absolutely horrendous. It's just the worst thing for any business, regardless of numbers. It's just awful that somebody can do that and get your property.
Yeah. No, it's really scary. And like, even like with Socially Ciara, like I got a notification even just like 2 weeks ago, like someone in New York has signed into your account. Okay, immediately change my password because that's not me. And I'm like, how did they get that? Like, it is really scary how people can get your information.
Absolutely. I'm always talking about double verification. But actually, the night that I was hacked, 3 of my friends that had their double verification, and I didn't at the time, because I was like, I'm so small, no one's going to be looking at me. They had attempts on their account as well. So they were definitely looking at a group of people that knew each other. So,
oh my God.
So that's a good note to finish on. We're going to go to quick fire questions. Okay.
Yeah.
So, Ciara, I'm just going to ask you these questions. And just for anybody, Ciara doesn't have these questions, so
no.
I'm going to bring them to you. Go with your gut, answer as you will. So,
okay.
Question number 1: is working for yourself all you wished for?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
What do you wish that someone may have told you prior to working for yourself?
That's a really interesting one. To really keep an eye on the finance side a bit more. I think that was something I learned very much as I went. I would have loved to kind of known a little bit more about that and have a little bit more knowledge on that at the beginning.
I couldn't agree. It's so important, and always the top question I get asked when I deal with people. Do you think you can fake it till you make it?
It depends on your industry. I think you can fake confidence. I don't know if you can fake knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For a very tiny period of time. Until someone asks you a question, and then it's like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely. Business reviews, overrated, understated?
Understated. I think people should be using them way more.
Cool.
Yeah.
Best platform for reviews?
In terms of like where to go in and
Like,
Put the
do you have
reviews.
a favorite? Like, I love for business. I love, like, obviously as a consultant, LinkedIn is my gig.
Oh yeah.
For my business, Google all the way.
Yeah, I would say Google will probably be up there for me. Yeah, because they'll come up when people look you up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Best business advice you were ever given?
Oh, this is a really good one. Best business advice I was ever given. Go with your gut, I would say.
Yeah.
A lot of the time that's probably where you're, like, if you don't go with your instinct, you do tend to regret it, I find. So yeah, go with your gut.
Yeah, hindsight is a great thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Apart from Google, what are the top 3 websites you refer to most and why? And you can say ASOS.
Uh, you know what? Pinterest a lot of the time, because it's another search engine, and I always use it for like inspiration and getting ideas and things like that. So I would say Pinterest. I hate to admit it, but I'm on Amazon a lot. I'm an Amazon girl, even though I wish I was able to support local business more. I think just this past year, Amazon's been amazing. And I spend a lot of time on YouTube.
Yeah,
So,
I love YouTube. I've started watching a lot of podcasts on YouTube.
Yeah, same. And there's a few YouTubers that I really like. I've been loving the Whitney Port reaction videos to the hills. So that's what I do in my spare time.
Oh, bless. I love it. Is there something about you that people would be surprised to know?
People get really surprised by my age, I think, a lot of the time. So I'm 30, but I look way younger.
You do.
Yeah, I know I do. And like, I think as particularly in business, that tends to surprise people. So yeah, I think sometimes people get surprised by my age. Yeah, I would say that's probably the one thing.
And listen, that's a massive benefit to you when you get to my age. Do you know what I mean? So keep with the looking younger.
Yeah.
Who is your business crush?
Business crush. It's a really interesting one. I suppose, I think in terms of the branding, I don't love it. But I think just in terms of how they've been able to grow and get their business to where it is, I do really think like the Boss Babe community is really good. And I quite like the community that they've built.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think in terms of aspiration, they're a really good one to look at. But I don't really like the Boss Babe thing, but I think, yeah, what they're doing is amazing.
I know what you mean, actually. I always said, like, I think like what they do is 5-star and the branding isn't.
Yeah, it just doesn't resonate with me. And it's all, I don't know, for me, it's a bit cheesy or something. I don't know. But yeah, I think what they actually do is great.
I do as well. No, definitely. Best book recommendations.
Best book recommendations. From a business perspective, or?
Up to you.
Okay. I think just from a book perspective, I think everybody should read the Da Vinci Code if they haven't. Blew my mind away. And then from a business perspective, I do think I have to give credit to Gary Vee again. I think his book Crushed It. He's got 2 of them. One's like an older version, and then he released an updated one about a year and a half ago. So yeah, I think those books are incredible, particularly for anybody wanting to use social media for their business.
Brilliant.
Really good. Yeah.
Top 3 podcasts.
Top 3 podcasts. So let me just look at my phone and see what ones, you know, when you're like,
see what you last listened to.
Yeah. I have 2 podcasts, so I'm not going to name my own ones because that's a bit silly. But what I do like is, what do I like? I'm Grandman is a really good one. So yeah, I mean, the 2 guys from Cork, I'm obsessed with them. I think they're really good. I really loved the High Low, which is, sadly they stopped it in December, so I'm yet to find one that's replaced it, but it's basically like a book podcast. They're really good. 2 girls from London. And I would say there's another really good podcast called Ace the Gram. It's two girls who are actually based in Australia, and what they do is they just talk about like updates from Instagram, and they kind of talk about like the world of social media. So yeah, I think that the information that they give is actually really good as well. So I said I throw in a business one there as well.
Absolutely, I'll be on that.
Yeah.
What's your most memorable achievement?
Memorable achievement. I think, to be honest with you, like starting the podcast was a really big moment, and that it was something I'd wanted to do for such a long time. So that was really amazing. I think my parents kind of obviously knew what I did for a living, and they were like, "Oh yeah, it's great," but they didn't really understand it. And I think when I got into the Irish Independent, for that interview that I did, I think that's when the light bulb moment for them kind of resonated, and that was a really lovely moment when they were like, we kind of get it now. This isn't you just on the internet doing stuff. It was, so I think from a personal perspective, that was quite nice. Yeah.
Brilliant. What is top of your bucket list?
Top of the bucket list, and I'm going to ease the team into it, but I really want to start like a look and see how we can use YouTube, because we've got the audio side with the podcast, we've got Instagram, and I think that there is something in YouTube. I just need to figure out our positioning and how we do that. But I would love, and now I've put it out there, so I'm manifesting it, and it has to happen. But I feel like there is something. There's a space for us on YouTube.
I would completely agree. I think it's I think it's tapped and yet so untapped.
Yeah.
I'm always going, but this needs to happen and this needs to happen. I think it's really exciting times ahead. But what's your favorite business brand and why?
Business brand and why? I think probably go with Boss Babe again, just because what they do is offer. I'm part of the society, which, if anybody doesn't know it, it's like a monthly business membership, and each month you get like I suppose it's a bundle, a business bundle, and there's a different offering. And for I think it works out at like £30 or €30 or something, but the pack is actually worth like 500, or sometimes it's 1,000. And you just get a lot of information if you are in that space where you're trying to do everything all at once, and you have to wear all of these hats, and they just give you so much information. I do think that's a really good one. So yeah, the Society by the Boss Babe again.
Brilliant. How important is your network to you?
Very, very important. And I think and you're probably the same. I'm very lucky with the network is kind of similar, but enough to be different. So I have friends who are photographers, I have friends who are videographers, who work in communication, and we all kind of help each other. And I think that that's a really lovely thing to do. So yeah, community is everything.
Yeah, I'm well, obviously that's what I do for a living now, so I really do believe it. And the connecting of people and seeing people work together, I get a buzz from it. It's lovely.
Yeah.
And what have you learned about yourself in the last 12 months?
Learned about myself in the past 12 months. I would have always thought that I was kind of probably not a great person to manage a team, because I'm quite emotional. I would have always been quite a sensitive person, take things hurt a little bit, even when they don't really mean to be. And I was like, I'm not the right person to be doing this, but you kind of have no choice. You just have to get up and go. And I've surprised myself how actually I can, when it's my own business, really kind of separate that. And, these things need to be done. And it surprised me how I've been able to kind of act like that when, I've kind of admired that about other people. So to see me kind of be able to distance the two has surprised me. So that's really good. And I think as well, my ability to stay calm, even when things are maybe falling all over the place. Like clients wanting to pause during COVID, and that's come up a few times, as I'm sure any other small service-based business will have, come across in the past 12 months. That's really stressful when you're paying people's wages. And I'm just like, okay, let's not freak out. It's going to be fine. It will all work itself out. And it has. And yeah, I would have never thought that I'd been able to kind of be calm. But yeah.
They're great learnings and a great way for us to finish. Ciara, thank you so much for joining me. And look, I can't wait to watch and see what happens. And I can't wait for your new YouTube TV program. It's going to be fantastic. You're streaming everywhere. You won't know yourself.
Thank you.